story is about a man called Joseph. Now, Joseph was the son of Jacob. Now, Jacob had got older and he had got lots of sons. Jacob was God's chosen person to have all of his children to be God's chosen people. And so Jacob had lots of sons, but Jacob liked his son Joseph the best. So much so, he gave him this lovely multicoloured coat to wear. And you know, this made Joseph's brothers quite jealous of him. And there was something else that made Joseph's brothers jealous of him. At night time, Joseph would have dreams. And one night, Joseph had a dream that he was out in the fields working the land, and they were all tying up some sheaves of corn. Now, all of the brothers had sheaves of corn, and so did Joseph. And then all of a sudden, all of the brothers' sheaves of corn started to bow down to Joseph's. And Joseph said to his brothers, it was like all of the brothers were bowing down to him. Now, none of the brothers really knew what this dream meant, but it made them very cross and even more jealous of Joseph, because they thought that Joseph was saying he was better than them. And so the brothers got together to make a plan, and they talked about how they could get rid of Joseph. And so one day, when they were out in the fields, they decided that it was time to get rid of Joseph once and for all. And so when Joseph came to the field to see how they were getting on, they took Joseph and they threw him down a hole. And then they planned to go back and tell their father that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. But before they went back, they did worry a bit about Joseph in the hole, and so they took him out and they decided that they would sell him. So he was sold to be a slave, and he had to go and live in Egypt. And so Joseph was taken all the way to Egypt, and he was taken there by his master to be a slave in Egypt. And that's what happened to Joseph. So Jacob and his sons were back living at home. Jacob was so very sad that his favourite son had been killed, or so he thought, by an animal, like the brothers told him. He didn't know that Jacob was here in Egypt. Now, whilst Jacob was in Egypt, he was continuing to have some dreams. And one night, the king had a dream, the Pharaoh, and he dreamt a dream that he didn't understand. And so when he woke up, he called to see if there was anybody that could help him to understand his dreams. Now, Joseph knew what dreams meant, and so he went to see Pharaoh. And he told Pharaoh that his dreams meant that there was going to be 7 years where there'd be no food, and 7 years where there would be food. And they must store up all of the food in the land whilst it was a good harvest. And so that's what they did for the people in Egypt. They stored up in sacks food whilst there was good food to harvest. They stored it all up into sacks. so that the people that lived in Egypt wouldn't be hungry when the food ran out. And that's exactly what happened. There was 7 years where there was lots of food, and then there was 7 years where there was no food. Now, back here, where Jacob and his sons were living, because they weren't in Egypt with Pharaoh and Joseph, they didn't know about the food running out. And so, once the 7 years of bad harvest came, they had no food. Finally, they decided that they would have to go and find help. So they made their way all the way to Egypt. Now, when they got to Egypt, oh my goodness, who did they see but their brother Joseph? Joseph recognised them at once, and they recognised Joseph, because Joseph was so good at telling the king about the dreams. Joseph had become a very important person. Joseph's brothers felt so sad and sorry for the broken love that they had shown. Do when they saw Joseph, they did bow down to him, just like Joseph had seen in his dreams. They knew that Joseph was a really important person in the king's kingdom. And they said that they were sorry for all of the broken love that they had shown. And what's amazing? Joseph, who was a man that loved God very much, and he knew how to love others too, because God doesn't only want us to love him, he wants us to love everybody around us. Joseph had a forgiving heart, and he knew that his brothers needed his help. But he also knew that his brothers needed his forgiveness. Just the same way that when we say we're sorry to Jesus, when our hearts feel sorry, Joseph knew that his brothers felt so sorry in their hearts for the broken love that they had shown. And Joseph was ready to forgive them. He was ready to share his food with them. But better still, Joseph invited all of his brothers and his father to come and live in Egypt with him. And Joseph's father, Jacob, was so pleased to have his son back close to him. Wow. I wonder if we would be as forgiving as Joseph was to his brothers. Joseph was sold as a slave. He was thrown into a pit. His brothers pretended that he was dead. But Joseph still forgave them when their hearts felt sorry. I wonder if there's somebody that we might need to forgive today in the same way that Joseph had to forgive his brothers.